Empowering diversity, embracing self determination and inclusion for individuals with disabilities. My name is Cecilia Derling, and I'm a disability advocate. And welcome to an enlightening exploration of disability, self determination, and the pursuit of a life filled with boundless possibilities. In this dynamic presentation, we'll unravel the different models of disability, uncover the impact of stigmatization on individuals with disabilities, discover the transformative power of self determination, and unveil the key to a truly fulfilling quality of life. First, we'll start off with the models of disability. The models of disabilities are theoretical frameworks or perspectives that shape how society perceives and understands disability. These models provide a lens through which we view and respond to individuals with disabilities, guiding the ways in which support and accommodations are provided. The various disability models offer distinct viewpoints on the nature of disability, the role of society, and the responsibilities concerning individuals with disabilities. These models can vary in their focus from medical aspects to social and cultural factors, and they influence policies, attitudes, and practices related to disability. So we'll review the charitable model, medical model, social model, and human rights models. We'll start off with the charitable model of disability. Under this model, disability is viewed through a lens of dependence, where people with disabilities are seen as objects of charity and pity. The emphasis is placed on the benevolence and goodwill of others to provide for the needs of individuals with disabilities. So, this model perpetuates a dependency narrative where the notion is that individuals with disabilities are reliant on the kindness of others. So, this reinforces a narrative that does not promote self sufficiency. By focusing on the charitable assistance offered to peoples with disabilities, this model may inadvertently undermine their sense of agency and self determination, hindering their ability to make choices and control their lives. Additionally, the charitable model can inadvertently stigmatize individuals with disabilities, perpetuating stereotypes and limiting their social inclusion and acceptance. So we can see that this first model has some problems. However, we must acknowledge that what emerged from this model is charitable work where nonprofit organizations can help temporarily assist individuals with disabilities. And there has been a more acceptance of individuals with disabilities through this framework. The next model is the medical model of disability. And this traditional perspective views disability as a medical condition or impairment that needs to be treated, cured, or otherwise managed by medical professionals. So rather than focusing on broader societal and environmental factors, uh, it's just we're trying to fix the individual's impairment. As a result of this framework, the medical model poses disability as a health problem, and that emphasizes the need for medical interventions in order to essentially restore normal functioning. And this can be problematic as the medical model often seeks to cure or fix the disability. And that's not always achievable, and that can lead to unrealistic expectations and disappointment. This model also perpetuates the idea that individuals with disabilities may be positioned as passive recipients of medical care and rely heavily on the expertise of healthcare professionals, um, forcing them to become dependent on the system. Under this model, the emphasis is on the individual's impairments. So it's very much a deficit perspective. And that's a very narrow focus on what a person can or cannot do. And it doesn't recognize their strengths and capabilities. So again, we see that there are some problems centered around this framework. However, Because of this framework, we have had a better understanding of how to treat and help individuals with disabilities and come up with, a lot of treatments and options for individuals with disabilities to help alleviate some of this pain. So, again, definitely a lot of pros, but we've seen a lot of really good things come out of the medical model as well. Now, the social model is a transformative perspective that shifts the focus from individuals with disabilities to society. So, this model recognizes that disability is not just an impairment, but that society has shaped societal norms, physical environments and spaces, and have perpetuated discriminatory practices. So, within this framework, the social model identifies barriers such as inaccessible buildings, prejudiced attitudes, and discriminatory problems as a primary contributor to disability related limitations. Excuse me. Uh, Society as a whole shares the responsibilities of removing barriers and ensuring that individuals with disabilities can fully participate in all aspects of life. So they see that it's a collective responsibility of society. And the focus is on inclusive environments and creating accommodations for the diverse needs of individuals. And this promotes equal participation and equal access to opportunities. Furthermore, the social model empowers individuals with disabilities to be agents of change, advocating for their rights and demanding social and structural improvements. So we see that this framework emphasizes the societal factors that have created disability as a phenomenon. Now, the last one we're going to talk about is the human rights model of disability. And this visionary perspective places disability within the framework of fundamental human rights. It acknowledges the equal dignity and worth of all individuals, regardless of their abilities. So, from this framework, again, this model emphasizes that people with disabilities have the same rights as any other individual, including civil, political, social, economic, and cultural rights. Furthermore, under this model, discrimination based on disability is prohibited, and efforts are made to ensure equality and inclusivity in all aspects of life. The human right model advocates for the full participation of individuals with disabilities in decision making processes, policies, and societal activities. Lastly, this model recognizes the inherent dignity and autonomy of individuals with disabilities, respecting their right to make choices and control their lives. So we see that within this framework, it really is about ensuring equal access and that it asserts individuals with disabilities are entitled to the same human rights and freedoms as everyone else. Now that we've explored the various models of disabilities, we've got to think about how these various models have contributed to the various stigmas associated with individuals with disabilities. So, we all know of some disability stigmas, and here are a few examples. Oftentimes, individuals with disabilities are regarded as being lazy or burdensome. They're pitied or considered to be ugly. And if you think about these really, atrocious stigmas, if you were to internalize those, I'm sure you would feel some type of way. So, again, we have to think about how these stigmas are impacting the emotional well being of these individuals. And what are some of these consequences that can arise if individuals with disabilities do internalize these stigmas? So, some potential consequences could be emotional distress, social isolation, and self doubt. We all would hate to experience these kind of things. And that prompts us to think, well, if there are these frameworks that are basically establishing these stigmas centered around disabilities, and these individuals are then internalizing it and having these negative experiences, well, we got to think about what we can do to help change this perspective. So I often turn to self determination, which refers to the ability of an individual to make choices, set goals, and make decisions about their own life. Essentially, we all want to be the masters of our own fates. So, why is self determination essential for individuals with disabilities? Well, self determination is particularly important as it empowers individuals with disabilities to be active participants in their own lives and communities. This is vital for them to feel empowered to speak on what they want their life to look like, to set the goals that will help them get to where they're trying to be, and to advocate for themselves when they are experiencing barriers. So we know that it's vital for self determination to be embedded in disability. But in what ways do the different models of disability influence the self determination and autonomy of individuals with disability? Well, we have to go back to these frameworks, and we'll start with the charitable model again. So, we see that there can be some impacts within the charitable model on self determination. There can be a reduction of impairment, limited decision making power, and even social isolation. We see within this framework that a lot of the power is given into the hands of the individuals who are operating the charities, and a lot of reliance is put on to these organizations, meaning that an individual isn't learning the skills to be self determined. And then when we look at the medical model's impact on self determination, we see that there's a limited limitation on autonomy. There are barriers to inclusion, and the unrealistic expectations can hinder personal growth. So, again, we see that there are some problems coming out of these two models when we are thinking about self determination. It seems as though these frameworks perceive disability to be a situation where individuals can't be independent, where others must come to the assistance and take care of those individuals. And we see that that's not entirely true, especially when we come over here and look at the social model's impacts on self determination. We see that there's enhanced autonomy, that there are inclusive environments, and that empowerment and advocacy are truly the goals that are driven behind the social model. And then when we incorporate that into the human rights model, we see that inclusive policies and environments, empathy and understanding, as well as legal protections, can help empower an individual with a disability to take control of their life, to be active participants, and to self advocate for their own needs. So, again, when we look at these frameworks, we have to identify how these models perpetuate the stigmas that then perpetuate whether or not an individual will be willing to be self determined or unwilling to be self determined. Now, when we think about self determination and the quality in regards to quality of life, which refers to an individual's overall well being and satisfaction within various aspects of their life, we have to consider that there are physical, emotional, social, and environmental dimensions that impact the quality of life. So we got to think to ourselves, in what way does self determination influence quality of life? So, again, if we follow that chain, at the framework perpetuates stigma that perpetuates a negative self perspective, then we'll probably end up with not the best quality of life experience. Whereas if we are operating from within a framework that has positive outcomes, where we are emphasizing self determination, then there is going to be a correlating experience where the quality of life tends to be more positive. So, again, going back to those frameworks, the charitable model centers around dependency and benevolence, while charitable acts may provide temporary relief and support. Relying on charity may perpetuate a sense of disempowerment and lack of an agency. This can limit opportunities, which can, again, affect their overall quality of life and self esteem. Now, when we look at the medical model, which focuses on the individual impairments and medical interventions, we can see that there's been improvements to certain aspects of health and functioning as a result of this framework. However, the quality of life might be impacted if individuals feel limited by their impairments or experiences within frustrations when they're experiencing these medical experiences. Now, when we look at the social model, we see that it emphasizes addressing societal barriers and promoting inclusivity. So, when we're focusing on creating accessible environments and removing barriers, uh, we provide more opportunities for individuals with disabilities to participate fully in society. So, that increased accessibility, social support, and reduced stigmas contribute to improved emotional well being and overall life satisfaction. The human rights model prioritizes equal rights, dignity, and inclusion for individuals with disabilities. So, when we embrace this model, we foster more equitable and inclusive societies where individuals with disabilities have equal opportunities to access all aspects of society, as well as not be discriminated against, which again, this all improves the quality of life an individual with disability will experience. So, a brief recap: there are four models of disability: the charity model, which relies on charity and may perpetuate dependency; the medical model, which focuses on individual impairments and medical interventions; the social model, which emphasizes addressing societal barriers for inclusivity; and the human rights model that champion equal rights and dignity for all. When challenging stigmas, we have to address stereotypes and misconceptions surrounding disability, emphasize the importance of promoting dignity and respect, and highlight the need to combat discrimination and promote inclusivity. The impact of self determination has the potential to empower individuals with disabilities to make choices and set goals, could potentially foster resilience, autonomy, and positive self image, as well as promotes advocacy, equal opportunities, and well being. Lastly, quality of life is influenced by societal attitudes and accessibility, enhanced by inclusion, support, and self determination. And when we create a more equitable and fulfilling life for all. Throughout our exploration of disability models, we have gained valuable insights into reshaping society's perception and support for individuals with disabilities. The social and human rights model show us the transformative power of breaking barriers and fostering inclusion, celebrating the unique strength within each person. Although the charitable and medical models may have good intentions, we have come to understand that genuine empowerment arises from fostering self determination rather than perpetuating dependency and adopting a deficit perspective. Let us ignite a profound change, embrace the human rights model, and championing self determination. We unlock the door to a brighter future. Together, we will build a society that embraces diversity, upholds equal rights, and nurtures the aspirations of every individual. Standing united, we create a world where each person, regardless of ability, soars and thrives. Empowered by inclusion, let us pave the way for a more equitable and compassionate world. Together, we can be the driving force of change. Pop quiz, please select the correct answers for each question based on the knowledge shared in the presentation. Question 1. What are the potential drawbacks of the charitable model's emphasis on charity and benevolence in supporting individuals with disabilities? Question 2. How does the medical model emphasize on fixing or curing disability impact societal attitudes towards the acceptance and diverse abilities? Question 3. What are the potential benefits of the social model's emphasis on addressing societal barriers for individuals with disabilities? Question 4. How can individual communities and policymakers work together to ensure that the human rights model is embraced and respected in all aspects of society? Question 5. How do the charitable and medical models of disability contribute to the development of stigmas associated with individuals with disabilities? Question 6. How might individuals with disabilities feel when associated with stigmas, and what emotional and psychological impacts could be such associations have on their well-being and sense of self? Question 7. Why is self-determination essential for individuals with disabilities? Question 8. How do the charitable and medical models of disability impact the self-determination of people with disabilities? Question 9. In what ways does self-determination influence quality of life? All right. Thank you so much for participating in this educational training on the various models of disability and how they impact self determination and quality of life.